Milk? Do you take milk?
Yeah, I'll have milk.
Yeah, I'll have a little bit of milk, thanks.
Yeah, Jones was his name when Mum met him because they wouldn't give him a job at the pits because he was fighting for the Union.
Oh, he'd be blackballed.
Yeah, he was. He's blackballed.
Yeah.
And Mum met him at Kembla.
Okay, so again, we'll talk about that, Jenny, get all that recorded, because you're probably the only one that knows that now. Let's go watch it out, put it on any of these old photographs. Well, you know, what I'd like to do is start first talking about the family, your family. My records go back to Currency Creek with David.
Yeah.
But also I've got literally nothing on Granny's side.
Oh, well, Mum's side came out from Scotland to Georgia.
Any idea when?
Oh, crikey, I don't know when.
Okay.
But Mum was the first child born in Australia. Right, she was there was George and Auntie Jessie and Uncle Jim, and then Mum was born in Australia, and the rest of the family were born at Georgia.
So where was she? She was born in Georgia?
Yeah, she was the first one.
That's Tasmania.
No, not Tassie. No.
Oh, sorry?
Georgia she was born.
Oh, that's here in New South Wales.
Over near
yeah, that's
Barrel.
right. Yeah. And what?
We've been over 2 or 3 times.
Okay. And that was, what were they mining there, do you remember?
Making kerosene. They had the shale
okay,
mining.
Okay.
Yeah. And they had the resorts there where they made, you know, sort of the oil and that. They made kerosene,
okay,
retorts,
yeah,
sort of. Yeah.
And I thought they ended up in Tasmania.
Yeah, they did. Zion in Tasmania. And that's when Uncle Jim and Mum come to over here for work. Like, there was no work there. And the brother, the eldest brother, Geordie, he was working in and he got dusted and he was dying, and they brought him they come to Melbourne, to Victoria, and he died in Sunshine in Victoria, the eldest brother.
When? Any idea of the
Oh,
time
we never clue the dates.
How old was he when he died?
I don't know.
Okay.
But so Uncle Jim and Mum had, Walter was a one of the younger ones, and they come to New South Wales to get work. They come to work, and Mum's mother then came to Helensburgh to live. So how it all worked out, I don't know. But anyway, and that's where she died, in Helensburgh, and that's where Mum was married, in Helensburgh. Mum and Dad.
That was a McKillop.
Yeah, McKillops. And she remarried, though, and they had nothing to do with her. But anyway, when she died in Helensburgh, she was buried in Helensburgh, the mother, like Mum's mother. But this was all before we were born, of course.
Yeah.
You know, sort of.
And were I guess they were coal mining in Helensburgh?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And when did Jim McKillop and Granny come down?
Well, they came to live, Uncle Jim got a job in Kembla Pit,
Right.
and they come down here to live in Kembla Pit. And Mum used to tell us that when they first went in, it was a slab place and it was lined with hessian bag.
Yeah,
That's what they lived in. And Walter, the brother they had, he had TB, and he died. He was only, I think, 12 or something when he died there. And Mum and Uncle Jim never split up. They just always stayed together, like. And even after Mum got married, Uncle Jim always lived with them.
Where were they living in Kembla? Were they down the bottom, or were they in those homes up on the top of the hill, do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Because Granny, I can remember going with Granny to Kembla.
Yeah.
And
went to a reunion.
No, we visited an old lady.
Yeah.
In a miner's home. The thing I remember most was she was lecturing Granny about the dangers of using electricity.
Yeah, yeah.
And she had her old irons on the stove
Yeah,
and sort of thing. So
yeah,
I don't know who that was, but it was a friend of Granny's.
Yeah.
Probably from when they lived there.
Probably, yeah. Because I'm only saying what I've heard from Mum, you know, I sort of, you know, just what she used to tell us and Uncle Jim used to tell us about it, you know. Because you couldn't get jobs then, that was when the Depression was on, of course, you know. Very hard.
Are there any other things or incidents that you can remember being told about Granny and Uncle Jim at that time?
Oh. um, no, well, Uncle Jim always stuck by Mum, and he never married, see, he never married. And he always lived with Mum, and even after I married, he still lived with them all. You know, he just, wherever Mum went, he seemed to go as well. They just seemed to always be together, sort of. That's all I know, you know, why, sort of.
Okay, well, before we talk about the being married, David Duncombe, apart from what we've got in the clippings and that, what stories do you remember being told about him?
Well, as far as Mum used to say, he told Mum that when he was about 12, his father was a very hard man, and they fought all the time. And when he was 12, him and his father had a mighty row, and Dad threw a hammer at his father, and he never knew whether he hit him or not, and he cleared out from home in case he'd hit him with the hammer, and never got in touch with him. Now that was the story Mum used to tell anyway, you know.
Well,
that
there was
Dad
another
told.
story that said that he left after his mother died, aged 12.
Yeah, well, he was 12, Mum said.
Yeah.
But this was only, and that he was never going to go back, sort of. His father apparently was a very hard man, you know, sort of.
And the gap then, from that point until he turns up in Balgownie?
Yeah, well, that I don't
What,
know what happened there, sort of, why, how he come to be here. But when he came here, of course, he got involved with the unions.
Yeah, well,
And that's when he got into strife, because he was blackballed from the pits, and he had to change his name to Jones. When Mum met him, he was known as Dave Jones. He wasn't known as Duncombe, because he couldn't get a job anywhere because he was fighting to get the lower hours in the pit. Like,
okay, so okay, we've got him now aged 29, that was about 1913.
yeah,
He's in Balgownie.
yeah.
He's married. How did the marriage occur?
Well, they married in Helensburgh. Like, that's all I know. And they came, well, he came down here for jobs.
Yeah.
And then Alice was born at Russellvale.
Okay, didn't know you lived at
You
Russell
know,
yeah.
Russellvale. Like, and your mother was born in Balgownie, up your street up at Balgownie there near Simpsons. You know where the old police station used to be, where Murphy's lived?
Where Murphy's lived,
Yeah, well, in the old place there. So
that's
they
only
moved.
three doors away.
They
from where she
moved
lived.
away a bit, round a bit, you know, sort of. And they ended up. They went into this shop here, and Jimmy was born over in the shop,
This is
Truscott's shop. Jimmy was born there, sort of. And then they went down to this little place next to where Jimmy is now,
That's the bottom end
and
of
that's
Balmoral
where
Street.
I was born.
Okay, now tell me a little bit about the shop, of what you were told of going into Truscott
Well,
shop.
that was a new shop, and Dad and Mum went into that shop, but they could never make a go of it because there was just too much debt. People couldn't buy. They were booking up things and couldn't pay for them, you know.
So who was born there?
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
was
So
born in that
what would
shop.
that give us? What year was he born?
Well, he was 2.5 years older than me, so 23 I was, so it'd be 20 or 21.
1921. Okay, that puts another date line down. How long were you in the store you're in?
No, well, couldn't have been too long
Yeah,
because
okay.
I was born down the other one and I was only 2 years
later.
older,
Yeah,
younger. Sort of.
Just avoid glancing at the camera.
Me?
Yeah,
I
you
didn't.
glance at the camera.
Okay, I didn't think I was.
Well, he's a fussbot, isn't he?
Okay, so we've got Truscott. You've moved down now to the bottom end of Balmoral Street.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You remember old Miss York's house there next
yes, I
to
do remember
David?
that, yes.
Well, that's where they lived when Dad was killed. That's
Yes,
where we
yeah,
lived when Dad was
okay.
killed.
Now, in that period, from Truscott's, he's obviously gone to Mount Pleasant Mine
Yeah,
to work.
must have. Yeah.
Can you then tell me a little bit about Uncle Jim and his involvement with David Duncombe?
Well, I can remember Mum telling us that he went to Kembla Pit for a job once, And he said his name was David Jones. And the fella brought a picture of him out and said, "No, you're not. You're David Duncombe." They had a
He was
picture at the
blackballed.
pits. He was blackballed, not to give him a job. Well, when Uncle Jim and him went into the pit, got the job at Mount Pleasant, they went as partners. Those days they worked in twos, you know, and shared. And at the end of the fortnight, they used to share out the money they were paid,
Yeah,
you know, and shared the wages and that sort of.
A darg, they used to
Yeah,
have a
that's
darg,
right, that's right. And and he worked with Dad. Well, then the day Dad was killed, I told you, Dad went in to do the job because Uncle Jim wasn't tall enough, and it came right down on him sort of and killed him. And Uncle Jim always blamed himself for that. Always used to tell us kids it should have been him, not Dad, you know, sort of. But then he worked hard to rear us. He helped Mum rear us, you know, sort of. He was always there, Uncle Jim. He was just always there.
One of the miners I remember telling me he used the term that the rock fall was based on what he called a slippery jack. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but apparently it was a slab of stone that I assume had a fault through it that you couldn't see, and it just came down as one. And there was something like about 8 tonne of it.
Oh,
came down
yeah,
and
I
killed
believe
him
there
instantly.
was. Terrific, yeah. Never had a chance, never had a
Just
chance.
take me back though. I'm still interested in that era when Uncle Jim and Dave Duncombe must have been heavily involved in Balgownie and in the
Uncle
politics.
Jim adored Dad, Mum said. He
Yep.
just thought he was wonderful.
Yep.
And when Dad got involved in the alderman and that, like the council and that, Uncle Jim used to always go with him and take all the notes
Right.
because Dad wasn't a good writer.
Yeah.
He wasn't well educated, hadn't been well educated. He left school at 12-year-old, wasn't he?
Yes,
And Uncle Jim, I can remember the books at home that Uncle Jim had, like ledgers of books. That every meeting he went to, Uncle Jim went with him and took all the minutes down, you know, sort of for him. Like, he worked with him that way. Uncle Jim was quite smart. He played the piano, and he bought that piano for Mum when she was 18.
Yeah.
Danny's got it,
Yeah.
still got it.
Yeah.
Danny's still got it.
That's interesting. They're very
Yeah.
good points. That time period though, still in the round about must be 1914 through 18. He's obviously been heavily involved with unions and this type of thing.
Oh, yeah, Mum said when the strikes was on, he did better. She had more money to spend than when he worked because they were allowed the trips away. Same thing. Now, when they went away, they got everything
Representing the
paid
unions.
for.
Yeah.
They got everything paid for and that. And she said actually she was better off as far as money-wise when he was on strike because Dad was a delegate that went everywhere. And they were going to confiscate all the money once and they brought it home and put it in the toilet bag, in the toilet.
I've
in
heard
the
that story.
paper bag,
Yeah.
in amongst the newspaper, and they never found it. So I didn't know where the money went to, sort of, till it was
This
all
would be
over.
strike pay for the men on
Yeah,
strike.
yes, yeah. They were going to take it all off them.
Who were they? Who was they? Do you remember? Was it the police or?
Well, I don't know, to be honest, David, but I'd take it would be the government or the owners of the pits, I suppose. I don't know,
Probably
really.
the police actually at that time.
Be the police.
Yeah.
I know she said they hid it in the paper, because she had the old newspaper in the toilets those
Yes,
days,
yeah,
outdoor
yeah,
toilets,
yeah,
sort of,
yeah.
and that's where they hid it, yeah.
Okay. Now, again, Uncle Jim. A little bit more about him, because he seems to be a.
Oh,
key
he's a
character.
big influence in our life because he was the only man in the house type of thing. He was a very decent man, Uncle Jim was. And he looked after us like a father, you know, sort of. I was going to say you could ask your mother. He used to, if they were out with a boyfriend and we're out the front, you know, talking at night, he'd sing out, "Ivy, Alice, time you were in bed." You know, he really looked after us like a father. And he put all that block into garden and helped
Yeah, I remember the garden.
help feed us and keep us alive. Yeah, he did, and he was. And very, very decent he was, a very decent man, sort of, you know. But he just lived for Mum, you know, and us kids. He used to say that he had to help keep us because Dad went in his place. He always felt that Dad died in his place, you know, sort of.
Now, just before we move off that subject, are there any other stories or memories that your mum would have told you of that time?
I can remember you walking on his cement before it was dry. Got into trouble about that when you were only little.
No, the
He had a
story-
violent temper. He did have a
The
violent
story that
temper.
I had, and I think it's closer to the truth than yours there, was that certainly I had gone out and played with it, but I think I was also the apple of his eye.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone was in fear and trepidation
right,
when he
that's
came home
right.
and saw that I'd messed
Yeah.
up his wet concrete.
He said,
But he took no notice
He said,
of it.
oh, he's only a baby.
Yeah,
Yeah, everyone was scared for him to come up. And when he went to the pit, he used to I always liked ginger nuts, and he used to put them in his tin they had, because they couldn't take a bag because the rats
Yeah,
used to
that's
eat
right,
their
yes,
food
they all had tins,
in the
yeah,
mine.
yeah, yeah.
And I used to like them soft, and he used to take the ginger nuts and bring them home for us from the pit. Yeah. And Jimmy and I once, he had a tree full of apricots, beautiful.
So it was a great apricot too.
And
I
he
remember
said,
it well.
don't you kids try and pick them, they're not ripe yet. So smart, Jimmy got up the tree and the branch broke.
Yeah.
And we were scared stiff for Uncle Jim to come home from work because we'd break this branch off the tree. Mum said, well, you better meet him at the gate and tell him, you know what he'll be like if you don't, you know. But that's memories of Uncle Jim. He was,
Righto.
he loved us kids, I know that. On our way home, Mrs. Phillips, that lived along the road, said to Alice, you better go home, your father's just been killed. And she said, and Alice collapsed on the street. And Mum, that was a story Mum always told us, you know, and she had to take her in, sort of. And I can just faintly remember Mum, us kids around Mum, but it's a real distant memory, but I can still see Mum crying and us kids, you know, around her lap sort of type of thing, you know. Sort of.
Yes, they brought his body back to the
Yes,
house.
back to the house. I can't remember. Well, I wasn't there because Miss Cowies was a friend of ours. McKinnon's, you'd remember
Yes, yeah,
McKinnon's.
yeah.
Well, Cowies, their parents. And they took us over to their place. We weren't there, like. But Alice was there because she was older. And she played, you know, she played the piano lovely. Well, our piano, same piano as Danny's got, was in the front room. That's where Dad was laid out, because they did those days.
Yes, yes.
And she said after that, every time she was practising, she was looking over her shoulder. She was always frightened in there, in that room, you know, later, sort of. But I can't remember much about, well, I can't remember really Dad, you know, I can't remember him, sort of.
Okay, let's move on to my mum and dad now.
Oh, yeah.
And
He was a good fella too, your dad.
okay, well, what do you remember? What's your first memories of him coming on the scene?
Well, he came on took Ivy out, met her at a dance, and at the old agricultural hall in Wollongong. That's down where the
That's down where the
showground
showground
was.
was, okay, yeah.
They used to have a Saturday night dance. And they'd only come out from England then. And Alice had an offer to go to America. Auntie Jessie, that was Mum's sister, lived in Alaska.
Okay.
She'd got a job as well, you call them a nanny now, but it's a governess. And she went to Alaska, and she offered to pay Alice and your mother's fare to America, like for a trip to Alaska to her. And anyway, Alice went, but your mother wouldn't go because she was going out with your father. And she wouldn't go, sort of.
Okay, well, we'll just divert a little bit there, because that's one of the things that we were wondering, the connection as to why Aunt Jessie went to Alaska.
Well, she got a job as a governess to a wealthy family,
Okay.
and they took her with them when they went to Alaska. And
So she got
never
a job here in Australia
Yes.
with the family. Okay, okay.
with them and went by boat to Alaska because there wasn't planes then. And she made a life in Alaska, and then she married, and they had a hotel in Alaska, sort of, her and her husband. Then she had a boy and a girl, but they did come out. Auntie Jessie and Lynette, that was the daughter, did come out here and saw Mum just before Dad was killed, apparently. But you know, I can't remember that. You know, sort of.
Yeah, I met her and Lynette.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
America.
Well,
Yep,
yeah.
yep. And I always wondered what the connection was. Okay, back to Mum and Dad. So they met in Wollongong. Dad would be living up the mountain then?
Yeah, and He made friends with the Elsons up the mountain.
Okay, yeah,
you know.
so there was a connection there. I remember
Oh,
Elson's always pretty good
They were
mates.
mates. Yeah, they grouped as a group,
Yeah.
sort of there. And he was all, Claudia Elson was always keen on your mum, but she sort of never took to him. And then your father, she started going out with father, and that was it, you know, sort of. And when Alice had the chance to go to America, she took it, but your mother wouldn't go because she was going with your father at the time, you know, sort of. And they used to go out in the old sulky, you know,
Yes,
and
yeah.
they went to a dance one night and she was all dressed up and they had to put the rug right up round her neck because in case the hairs come off the horse, you know, old Lena was the name of the
it's a
horse.
pretty old horse. I remember the horse.
Yeah, and they used to drive mother around in it, didn't they?
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of in the sulky. Yeah.
And how long did they go out together before they married?
Oh, they'd be a while, and those days to have an outing, you went up the bush on hikes and picnics and things like that. That didn't down the beach. It didn't cost much, you know, because there was just no money about. You know, Mum worked to keep us and was getting £1 a week, you know, to work and that sort of. There was no money around those days. But they had, and see, we had the piano, and Alice used to play, and that was a night they'd all come to one place and bring something for supper and all have a sing-song. They were happy with that, you know. So, of course, there weren't the clubs then, though. There was no clubs around those days.
Now, one of the other things I picked up in the records was that Mum and Pheme were married on the same day.
Yes,
What
but
do you remember about that?
no, I can't remember much about that. I know they were, but all the Curry family came to your mother's wedding, and I think they were just married very quietly at a registry office type of thing. Rosemary's the one that you'd know that. Yeah.
Okay, so where did Mum and Dad live?
They lived, when they were married, they lived at our place with Mum, like with us. And then they bought a block of ground. It was down on the highway there.
Yes, I know exactly where it was.
Yeah.
The corner of Station Street.
Yeah, that's right. And anyway, they bought this for about £50, I think, or something up here. And him and Mr.
This is Balmoral Street.
Yeah, up
51
there.
Balmoral Street.
Yeah. And they built Ev James's father was a bush carpenter, and him and your father and Dinsel and them people got in and helped those days and built that first. Then you added on later on, you know, sort of, and built that place there. Sold that to build that sort of the block at Ferry Meadow to build that one, and that's where you three were born.
Yeah, well, I think I was born when they were still living.
Yeah, they was
your
living
place,
with us when you were born. Yeah.
Okay, there's one I'm going back to though.
Because we just thought you were the Aunt's pants when you were born. No, nobody like you.
I just want to go back onto the subject we were previously on. The building of that house and the store became the original home on the main road there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, each child got a certain amount as well. I think you'll find in one of the records somewhere. In those paper clippings Danny gave you.
Okay.
I think it is. And Mum got so much and each child got so much, for compensation. And Mum bought that whole block for £100 right through. Cowies owned that, And then she built the house with the money, which was only about 900 and something £, but it built the house at those days. And then when the shop fell through, she took on catering for the football club. The football clubs they used to come down and stay overnight at the hotel those days in the State League. And Mum used to cater their dinner at night, you know, sort of. And that's how she kept going then, sort of. And then as the years went on, it just got let as a private half. That's when they did the back on, you know, sort of. And the kitchen had to go with the half the house, of course. So we had to have the kitchen downstairs, you know, sort of.
Well, the shop mustn't have lasted that long. How many years did the shop run?
Well, it couldn't have lasted long. Although I was only little then, and I can remember I wasn't allowed in where all the men were. when when the footballers were there, you know, sort of. But no, I wouldn't say it lasted long because Mum said people just couldn't pay their way. And like to get the small goods, like the meat and that, they used to be sent from Sydney by train. And they'd have to go down and get it straight away, or it went off, you know, and that sort of thing. There was a lot of problem with it, you know, sort of. They didn't have the big fridges and that like we've got now, and the ice cream was just penny scoop, you know, scoop things, sort of. Yeah.
I recall the Bushell's tea sign. Right?
Yeah, on the
of it.
side. Yeah.
And I can just remember going in there, and there was still the remnants of a milk bar. They had the milk shake.
Yeah, that's right. The
shake
old
glasses
ones,
and all that sort of
yeah.
stuff.
Milk, I've still got one, one of the shake glasses. Yeah, I've still got one.
All right. Well, let's come to you personally now, and say when you're around about 17, that would have been war years. What's your memories of?
I was
Balgownie
married then. I was married when I was 17.
17, you're married.
Yeah.
Gee, okay. So what was Balgownie like then?
Well, it wasn't much different. We still made your own fun, and there used to be a threepenny dance. You've heard your mother talk of that, surely. That was the big event in Balgownie. It was a dance, and that Lizzie and Blue were one of the ones that got it going, and they were beautiful dancers, and they were going to teach all the young kids how to dance. And they only charged threepence because no one had more than threepence to spend.
And that was every week?
Yeah, once a week that threepenny dance was on, and they taught you how to waltz, like to dance, sort of. Well, wasn't the dances they have now, and they taught you to dance, and that was a great event, the dance. But I was never a dancer, and I used to go with my girlfriend to the pictures. I used to love to go to Wollongong pictures, and that cost threepence each way on the bus and sixpence to get in. The pictures, the old Crown Theatre. It's not there now.
But
But that's where your mum and them, like your dad and them, that's where they socialised at the dance more than anything, you know. And then they'd go on picnics, as I say, up the bush of a Sunday. They wouldn't go in, you know, when Dave never thought of anything wrong happening, because they went in groups, you know, and would go up to the Kira Pit or up Corrimal and just have a picnic, and, you know, that was their outing for the day, you know. So,
give us your memories of the Crown Theatre.
Oh, the old Crown Theatre.
The buses queued up outside.
I owned a seat in that theatre, I'm sure I did. Yeah, they used to, and if you didn't make a rush out to get it.
What time did you leave Balgownie to go to the pictures?
Oh, 7:15, and 7 o'clock there was a bus. We don't have it now, I might add too. And we got, and on a Friday night was late night shopping in Wollongong those days, and the old Salvation Army band used to play on the corner, you know. And we got the pictures, and then at half time you rushed across the road to buy your ice cream or whatever you wanted. And then the buses lined up, and if you didn't rush out, you couldn't get on the bus. You stood most times all the way home, but there was Dions and Rolls buses, you know. And when the war years was on, all the soldiers used to get on the buses. And Dion's bus, they would all pile out at Cabbage Tree Lane because there was a camp like in Cabbage Tree Lane. And the first one would say, he'll pay behind. Dion's never charged. And, you know, they did a lot for this area, Dion's. Yeah, they did.
All right. Let's move on to Balgownie and talk about some of the characters and places. We'll do sort of a drift up the main street, but rather than just who lived where, if we can sort of come up with little bits of stories about the people who lived in those houses. You know, if we start, for example, at Dunning's Bridge and
everyone was scared of old Snapper because he was always drunk, you know. He was hopeless, but everyone was wary of him, you know.
Kids we weren't. We used to come from Barney's down through there, and I remember going to his home.
He wouldn't have hurt anybody.
No,
he would never have hurt anybody.
So, as you came over, there was the was it Pozzes or?
Yeah, Pozzes lived there, then Del
No,
Santos.
tell me about the Pozzes and Del Santos.
Well,
Do you
they all
remember?
went to, they would come out here as migrants, see, and they all went to Balgownie school with us. We were reared with them.
Yeah,
Then you made no difference. There was just no difference in them, you know, sort of.
had good grapes.
And yeah, and they used to sell eggs. They had a lot of chooks, and they used to sell eggs. And then every Christmas and Easter, we used to buy a chicken off them, and oh, that was a great big treat. Christmas and Easter, if we had a chicken, that was a big treat when we were kids.
Yeah.
And you bought them off them, and they chopped the head off for you, you know, sort of. You had to clean them all up yourself, you know, sort of. But they were all reared, like went to school with us. You
Yep.
never made any difference with
Yep.
them, you know, sort of.
Yeah, well, I guess the next one that I remember coming through there would have been Tommy Knowles' shop.
Yeah, he had his shop there, yeah, and
Tell us a bit about Tommy and his wife.
well, Tommy, he used to live, oh, he was a weird character, if ever there was one, was Tommy, you know, and he married her through an ad in the paper. He put an ad in the paper, she told me that herself, and she was a meek little thing, you know, sort of, and she, oh, he was weird, really weird, Tommy, you know, sort of, yeah. But not that he was in the shop for quite a while though, and then he used to collect bottles. Can you
Yeah,
remember?
that's right. I remember
Bottles
kicking
and
bottles. Yeah,
he used to
selling
collect bottles as well. Yeah. But she was a nice enough person, you know. But she was very soft, sort of. I think she just did as she was told, you know, sort of. Yeah.
And I have very fond memories of.
And then Jarvis's, can you remember?
yeah,
they went
but
in there then.
Yeah, but they didn't have the same uniqueness
No,
of Tommy.
they weren't the same. Yeah.
But I remember I used to always like going down to your place for lunch, and we'd play and that type of thing. But we'd have Devon.
Oh,
and go
yeah.
and get
Devon and
dozen
tomato
slices
sauce.
of Devon and tomato sauce, and
Saturdays,
Reg
special.
would be sitting there working out what he's going to put his one-shilling bets
yeah.
on and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Whenever Saturdays I still eat Devon, and whenever I do, I think of that.
Yeah. And
Okay.
even Smokey wouldn't eat meat without tomato sauce on.
But,
He had to have tomato sauce too.
I think then we came on to your place. Tell us your memories. I've got a lot of detailed memory of the kids playing football and cricket in the yard
Yeah, knocking down all my plants. Yeah, I can remember that part of it. No, we just had fun all together. Those families seemed to be like that, you know, and you kids would out. Your mother and dad would go away on their holidays and you would all stay down home. Some stages we put the tent up and you slept out in the tent and thought that was great, you know, sort of. But your mum and dad used to go off with Joe Scarlett and Jean, and you would all just stay there and just. You used to first have the cricket out on the street, remember that? Till they got a few cars.
I played your place too, used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was cricket out there.
yes.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
But then we moved inside and
Yeah.
I remember
Oh, that was a
window.
big event, wasn't it? Yeah, the cricket at Christmas
I
time.
remember that window in that place.
Yeah,
back
broke
in
it more than it was
Cop-
right.
Copter hammering.
Yeah.
And
But, I mean, I've got good memories. We didn't have money. We had no money, whatever. But when I think back, you know, we had a good time. And one thing with our family, we never argued. I can never remember having an argument. And your father, he used to take me, like I was only a kid when they were going together, and he used to take me everywhere with him. You know, I can remember in the sulky, you know, he used to take me, and he, once we went down the cemetery to Dad's grave, I never forgot it, and they just had new pebbles put on. And I took 5 of them to play jacks. And your father told me on the way home that the ghost would come and haunt me. When I got home, and I wasn't, when I went to go to bed, I went and threw them away because he scared me that much. I wasn't going to keep the pebbles off it. So. But he was good to me, your dad. He used to cart me around everywhere with him, sort of.
yes, I have some very, very fond memories of that place and the big garden, Uncle Jim's garden.
Yeah, he
right
always
down
had
the
fruit trees
stuff,
and grapes and everything. Yeah.
Figs, the big fig tree.
Fig
and,
tree, yeah.
Strawberries.
He's very good to us.
Yeah.
That's the part I remember
Yeah.
of him. And I don't think I ever saw Uncle Jim do anything that wasn't sort of, he wouldn't get dressed in front of you, things more, you know, very prudish that way he was, you know, too. And
Where did he actually live in that house?
on the front veranda.
Oh, okay, it was front
Him and
veranda.
Jimmy
Yep,
slept
okay.
out. And that was, when we first built the house, that was open. The front veranda was open. In fact, someone showed me a photo one day they had of it. But then when they sort of changed the house, that was done in. The front was done in, and Uncle Jim and Jimmy slept out
Yep.
there, sort of, you know. Yeah.
Righto, well, the next thing would have been the co-op. What do you remember the old co-op store? What
Oh,
stories
well,
on
I
that?
can remember going over and buying threepence worth of broken biscuits, because the biscuits were in tins those days, and you could buy threepence worth and get this big bag of broken biscuits, you know, sort of for threepence. And they delivered your groceries and that, because we didn't have to, we were across the road, but that was a co-op sort of affair, you know, sort of, there was, but, and if you could book up, like, and pay you on payday, you
Yes.
could pay the bill on payday, sort of. You could do that at the butchers as well, those days, you know, sort of. But, oh no, they're good memories, hard time, no money, but I don't think that seemed to worry kids, because everyone was the same.
Well, everyone...
Nobody had it.
Never went hungry.
No.
But I guess my memory is they used to have the cornflakes and stuff like that stored up right up on the top shelf. And they had a pole with a hook on it. And they'd get up and hook it, catch it.
And they had to pay the old trolley thing when it across, what do you call it?
Lamps and tubes.
Yeah, went across
went
to
across
the
to
office.
Mr. Drury sat in his office over there.
Yeah.
And the chaff and all that were in the sheds.
Was
at the
in the back,
vault,
in the back there.
Okay. Now the co-op was a major centre, as I
Oh
remember.
yes, it had everything.
Yep.
You had everything in it, and as I say, you could book up for fortnight, and every fortnight you got your bill.
Yep.
You know, and had to pay your bill. You know, sort of each fortnight, sort of. Because you were paid fortnightly those days. If anybody worked, they were paid fortnightly. They weren't paid weekly, sort of.
Okay, well, as we come up, Finley's was next door to you.
Yes.
And
Then Davis.
yeah, I remember Mr. Finley with the big garden. And
Yeah.
as I said in one of the books I've read, they said that there was a Finley that would come around selling fruit and vegetables and fish.
He could have been, but I can't. When Dad died, him and Uncle Jim went mates in the pit.
Right.
And payday, he used to come in, and they used to work out what the pay was.
Right, okay.
You know, sort of what their pay was.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
And he married an Aboriginal lady. Can you remember that?
Yes, I think I do.
And Diddy, can you remember Diddy, the son? Well, I don't know whether he was black anyway, but he was a great mate of Jimmy. Jimmy and him were great mates.
Yeah. Okay, well then we had Bill Compton's shop on the right.
On the right.
And I noticed his name was down in the football.
Yeah, but that would be the father.
The father, okay.
And they lived down near, he lived with his daughter next to Tommy Knowles on the downward side of Tommy Knowles, Middleton, Ada Middleton, and her husband was killed at the steelworks.
Right.
And like the father always lived with them, as far as I can remember. And then Bill married Reen Williams, and then they went into that shop sort of for a while. But she was a very sick lady. She had TB, and they had no cure those days for
That's
TB.
right, yeah. Okay, well then we came on to the School of Arts, which of course was another centre of the town.
Well, that was the whole thing in Balgownie, wasn't it? Remember when I went to school, they used to have a big ball at the end of the year, you know, there, and there again, Liz and Blue used to come and teach all the kids how to dance for months, weeks ahead. You were practising how to dance for the big march, you know, so a big event it was. And concerts,
Yes,
had a
I
lot
remember
of
the
concerts, yeah.
I remember going up the mountain to get the
palms,
palm
to put at the back,
and decorate or cover the stage
decorate all the
palm,
stage. The old piano's still there.
Yeah.
They think they're keeping it as they wanted to get rid of it, but the committee fought and wouldn't let them get rid of the piano because it's been there since 1922 or something.
Yeah, they
you
used to play with the silent movies.
And Walter Scott used to play.
Walter Scott, that's right, that's his name. I was trying to think who that was.
And on the romantic parts, he was really nice, and on the Indians come,
galloping horses.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that was the old silent movies.
And you know, you were as an adult as far as I was concerned then, but that you would sit up
Yeah.
the back a bit, and then up on the stage was
Yeah,
you
well,
paid
that was
extra
the
to sit up
gods
there.
up there. Yeah,
and,
that well, the Alita Balgownie sat up there. Yeah,
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
on
yeah,
the stage.
yeah,
Yeah, and I can remember before your time that the girls had to sit on one side and the boys had to sit on the other.
well, I think in our time the girls preferred to sit on one side.
Well, naturally, you threw things at them all night.
Pea
yeah.
shooters and
those lollies, what do you call them? Smarties.
Yeah.
Used to pelt you with Smarties all the
pea
time.
shooters were
Yeah.
the go, and that I remember. You just mentioned Walter
Scott.
He had the bamboo. He used to grab bamboo,
Yeah, yeah,
and you'd sell your
Yeah.
length of bamboo, and that's what they made the pea shooters out of.
yeah, yeah,
And you'd get a handful of peas,
yeah.
probably at Compton shop or somewhere like that, and they knew what they were selling it to the kids for.
Course
You
they
get a little
did.
bag of peas, and the wars would go all
Pelt
night.
them all night.
And,
yeah, no fun at the
Mavis-
movies, I can tell you.
Mavis Truss got me there with a torch.
Yeah, she was a tough old girl, Mavis.
She'd kick us out. She'd kick half a dozen kids out, and
Yeah, she did too. She
Yeah.
was pretty tough, wasn't she?
then
Yeah.
they'd all be back in again. Again, it was used also for things like the Buffalo Lodge.
Oh yes, that was a Sunday night of Buffaloes.
We'll go through that because you guys had the catering.
We had the catering of their supper, and Jimmy and I copped a lot of that because we were just the age, you know, and we used to have to have the supper ready for a certain time, but Jimmy and I used to have to go up the hall, and we had a primus, 2 primuses, just old, you know, the pump primus, and one was coffee and the other was the hot water for the tea, and if they were late, sort of breaking up, we'd be sitting there like this, freezing cold in that side, in the hall.
side,
They were
yeah,
in the back, so till they were ready to have their supper.
Yeah.
That's how Mum earned the money to keep us, so like she had to. She had no other way. There was no other way then, sort of. for them
I
to
can
learn.
remember them cutting up the sandwiches, and they used to cut the crusts off,
Yeah.
and there'd be bits of meat and stuff in there. And we used to eat the.
Yeah, well, your
crust.
mother and I did it for a while with the Buffaloes later on, years later, you know, sort of. But this was all just enough money to keep you, sort of thing, you know. And you did washing and ironing for a day for 10 shillings.
Yeah.
Used to get a 10 shilling note
Yeah.
for washing and ironing for
Yeah.
the day. Yeah, she did it the hard way. She was a wonderful person, really.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
to do, when you
Hard
think,
worker.
Jimmy and I used to often talk about it. He said, how did Mum ever do it? You know, how did she keep us all?
Yeah.
But that's how way she did it. She sort of went out and worked daily
Everywhere. Yeah.
for
yeah.
it. Yeah, and she just thought you were wonderful. Yeah, she just thought you were wonderful. We
And-
all did, actually.
Working at, she worked for Corwell's, I think, in the
Yes.
house here, and then in Wollongong.
Yeah, she worked at Call's over at the old butcher, you know, where the house was. Remember the
yeah,
house?
yeah,
There for old Mrs. Call. Now, Mum said she used to often give her a big, coming home, a parcel of meat, you know, to bring home, which helped. Mum used to say, never look down on Balgownie people, they help keep you alive. And she often used to give her a parcel of meat to bring home, you know, sort of. And then she went in later years
into
to Frank
Crouch Street.
Call,
Yeah, yeah.
like at Wollongong, kept house for them in Wollongong.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Righto.
She worked there till she was 78.
Yeah, I know she was
at
must have been a good old
Calls.
age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're sort of still doing that walk up the street, but we'll leave Balgownie Club because I want to come back to that in a little more detail. And you wouldn't know anything about Balgownie Club anyhow, would you?
No.
Okay, so as we come up, we had Dr. Castleberg, I remember, on the
Oh,
right-hand
yeah.
side. And then the Simpsons.
Simpsons
trucks
were next
later.
to them. Yeah.
They used to cart timber from Nelligan down the coast through to Murray's timber yard.
Yeah.
They took the timber up to there. Then from there, coming up, I guess, the butcher shop was Corwell's butcher shop.
Call's butcher
And,
shop. There was Frank Call, there was Ernie Call, and then there was Ronnie Call, and then there was the
Yeah.
butcher shop. Yeah.
And you know, apart from buying meat there, they used to buy the newspapers. So
Yeah.
kids we used to save the newspapers and
Yeah, you
get tuppence or something.
used to go and they used to buy them off
Yeah.
you because they wrapped their meat in
Yeah.
like newspaper. Yeah. And on the opposite corner was the Teddy James's shop there.
Yeah, well, and I mean, Teddy James's shop was the key shop there.
Oh yeah, it
It
had
was-
everything. It had
It was
fruit.
much bigger than Truscott's.
Oh yeah, it had groceries, fruit, and everything,
Yes,
vegetables
yeah,
and
yeah.
everything. You know, in
Yeah.
that one. Yeah, it was quite a good store, really.
And
And then this block here was Murray's owned. This, can you remember when they owned that? You remember Oshie Murray and
Oh,
Don,
yes,
you remember
yeah.
Donnie Murray?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Well, I lived here then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
on this block.
But then, just before Truscott's coming up the hill, there always seemed to be a bit of a movement through those shops. There was a
yeah,
bakery and...
Yeah, well, there was the bakers.
Now, tell me that because I don't remember the bake house itself.
No,
only as an SP bookie place.
Yeah, but the bakery was long before you were
Yeah,
born.
yeah.
Was stopped. Bakery had
Right,
stopped.
okay.
You know, before you were born, and they had the bakery, and then they used to go the back lane to the bookies.
Yes,
And
the
that
bookies
sort of
was in
thing.
the old bakery.
Yeah, well, then when Truscott's went into that house, they had that back of that because Mum worked there then.
Yeah,
Mum
yeah.
worked
I remember
there.
her working
She
there.
worked
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
housekeeping there
Yeah,
for a while,
yeah.
like in there. And they had the corner. And then later on, a bootmaker went in there for a little while. I don't think you'd remember
No.
that. And then a chemist. Can you remember Mr. McDonald first when he come to Balgownie? He went in there, and then they later went in down here,
Yeah, yeah.
down
Remember
below,
that here.
down below me,
yeah.
here for a while. And then when he died, she remarried, and they went into this one on the corner. So,
Oh,
but
right.
it's because it's gone now.
I remember
He
over-
died too. Retton.
yeah.
Max has died too. Sort of had the one down there. He's died, and it's a new Australian chap that's got it now.
Oh, I remember over in around the bakehouse that there was a cake shop and
Yeah,
and at one
the
stage
guest cake shop was
That's
there.
right, yeah.
Guest cake
and then
shop.
then Gibson's had a fish and chip shop.
Yeah, for a while. Yeah,
mm,
that's right.
Because
Yeah.
I was mates with Johnny Gibson.
Yeah,
And we used to
yeah.
get down and make the
Yeah.
chips. They had a chip making
they
thing.
didn't
that was-
last long.
No, no.
See, the money wasn't in business those days.
Yeah.
The people wanted to buy the things, but they couldn't afford it. And if it come to the fortnight when they had to pay, they didn't have the money. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
you
just
had to wear it. Yeah.
you had to put up with that sort of, you know.
But that hub around the sort of Truscott's, James, the pub,
Well, the
that was the
pub-
centre of the town.
Oh yes,
And
and Bondi was on the corner.
Bondi was on the corner. We weren't allowed to go to Bondi's.
Oh no, old Bondi was lucky to get him sober too for a weekend. I can remember Bondi, my girlfriend Rita Johnson lived down Hunter Street. Billy Johnson's, that's on those soccer ones,
Yeah.
and he drank a lot.
They all drank a lot.
He was a drinker. He used to come home, he boarded at Johnson's because he was never married, Bondi. And when he was drunk, we loved it because he used to give us sixpence each when we were going to the pictures. Because he was drunk, he used to always give Bet and Rita and I sixpence to go to the pictures with.
No, I never put foot in his shop because I was
You weren't game.
and I think the only thing Mum had against him was that he apparently had pictures of
Oh yeah, he was modern.
they were probably girls in in
neck to knees.
bathing suits or something, but it still was not allowed. So
He
I
used to often sleep in the shop.
was
He had a
never
bed
allowed-
in the back of
he
the
was
shop.
supposedly yes, that's
But he
right.
boarded at Johnson's.
I'd
But
get nits in my hair, and God knows what would happen to me if I went in there.
weekend he was always drunk. Bondi. Him and Billy used to get drunk. Yeah.
But I remember that sort of area as the
Well, that was your childhood around that area.
as
They
the
were all
work up.
there. Yeah.
as the work up to Cracker Night.
Yeah. Oh well.
And
Old cracker night.
you wouldn't believe what they used to do with those rockets and stuff. And I remember
yeah. That's
fighting
what-
with them across on the corner there, a cordial bottle with a penny rocket in it,
Yeah,
and
that's
firing
right.
it at the kids. There'd be
Yeah.
one group under Truscott's, another under James, another under the pub. And the amazing thing was when you fired them all out, you'd all go back into Teddy James and he'd sell you another couple of
Yeah.
dozen. And you could see the kids,
Yeah.
what must have been regarded as highly dangerous, but
I often laugh now that they don't allow you to have crackers in your own yard anymore, and I often say to the kids, I wish they'd have seen the cracker nights we used to
We'll
have.
come back to the cracker nights.
Yeah.
Let's just go back before we move too far away to the club. And I've got it headed here as the church that became a club.
Yeah, it was a church.
And I was interested up at the museum. They actually had photographs of the old church
They're pretty.
on the rollers, ready to be dragged across
Yeah.
into that area. But it's an interesting story that Dad and Joe Scarlett,
Yeah.
when the Buffalo Lodge closed down, they had the money that was left in the club, and they were told that it was to be returned to the Royal and Ancient Buffalo Lodge in Sydney, to which they said, no way, it's our money. And Dad told me that they bought that land where the club is now with the idea of building a swimming pool for the kids in there, but it changed over to the Sports and Social Club, and they dragged that church across.
Yeah, I can remember all
I
that.
remember there were about 8 or 9 big gum trees on that
Yes,
block,
there was too.
and they cut them down.
We used to cut up through there to go over to the...
They cut them down. No chainsaws those days, it was all crosscut
No.
saws. But the thing that impressed me most about that was they had these big stumps, and they must have been a good 1.5 metres, 2 metres diameter of the trees they'd cut down. And one Sunday morning they brought a couple of the guys down from the pit, the blasters,
Oh, yeah.
and they just dug
Blew 'em
underneath
up.
those things and bang, and that was
That'd be right.
amazing. One hit and they were gone. I can remember that very, very well.
That's what you
But,
did, though. You
yeah,
improvised.
But the interesting thing was that when they came to build the club as it stands now, to get the bank loans to do that, they had to go to the banks. This was the first time they'd ever borrowed money. Up until then, they'd had enough cash to build the second part of the club. And when the banks went to check before they'd lend them the money, who had the deeds, Joe Scarlett and Dad owned the land.
What about that fellow
they-
that lived up near the school? He had a bit to do with it, didn't he?
Bob Chalmers.
Chalmers,
Yeah,
that's
well, he was the
right.
first manager of it.
Yeah, he was. I
And
remember.
he was probably involved, but the deeds were in the name of Dad and Joe Scarlett.
Yeah,
So
I-
they actually owned
Well,
it.
they were the ones
They
that
were the
fought
legal
for
owners.
to get it, you
and,
know.
they signed it over to the club. Well, where do we sign? And they made them both life members. And that's the story of the club.
Oh,
there, which
yes.
is,
Your dad and Joe were the ones that got the club. Yeah.
Okay, well, the other thing around this area here, I remember some of the characters, and I think we should touch on a few of those if you can remember them. I remember Alan Gamel,
Yeah.
and how we were told we had to give him the utmost respect because he was a soldier.
Yeah,
of
he
the
was
war,
shell shocked.
and he was supposedly shell shocked, and I can remember him singing out and
Used to
marching
march up and
up
down
down
the
there, yeah.
street. Yeah.
and we were under all sorts of threats
Yeah.
if we
He didn't interfere with him.
poked fun at him or anything like that. And that's so typical of the way Balgownie was.
It was.
And you could bet if you did, someone would tell your father
Oh,
pretty quickly.
Give you a boot or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Um, So, what other
It
characters
was a
do
little
you...
village. That's,
Yeah, that's
what
one
it
I remember.
was.
Have
It
you
was
got
a-
any that you can think
It
of?
was a little village. Well, I always sort of think of, well, the drunks around. I suppose there were just as many drunks around then as there is now when you come back to it all, But you could walk around Balgownie all night and not be afraid of anybody interfering or that with you, which you can't do now, unfortunately. But they were just people like the McDonalds that live next to you. They're all mental.
Yeah, well, they were quite...
But you just put up
Yeah.
like that was a part of Balgownie,
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah.
And I tell you, it's not like that now. There's so many strangers
Yeah.
now. Of course, things change. You can't expect them to be the same, but they helped each other. If anyone got hurt playing soccer, they had raffles and things like that to get till they got back to work. That sort of friendly type of thing. But we had a pretty ordinary life, I think.
Again, coming back and staying in that area, I remember the pub, there was a galvanised iron fence running up to Eshman's house,
They used to open on the corner. It used to open out on the corner
Yes,
of the
yeah,
pub.
yeah. And there were people, the guys, mainly the gangers coming down from building Mount Ousley Road,
Yeah.
would come down to the pub,
Yeah.
and they would get drunk, so drunk they couldn't get home. They used to sleep alongside
Yeah. I can remember them.
the wall there. And of a Sunday morning going to Sunday school, we'd always walk along that wall because where they'd been laying there, the coins might have dropped out of their pocket. And we used to always pick up quite a bit of money down through there.
Going to Sunday school.
Yeah. And of course they used to fight out there as well.
Oh yeah,
They
they were
of
pretty
fights
rough
there.
lot, those lot. Yeah.
So,
But that was when the war was on, wasn't it?
yes, yeah. We were 7 or 8 year old then. And of course the other big deal there was the SP Bookie, who was in the
Oh yeah.
bakehouse, and the cockatoos. They used to have guys
Yeah, watching out for
watching
the
out.
coming. Yeah.
As I always remember, Dad came down. It was with Jimmy Taylor,
Yeah.
and he was walking down the pub, I think, to see them. And the cockatoos thought because he was a big man, thought he was a copper in disguise, and away the whole thing went.
Oh yeah, they had them
It was Jimmy
out.
Taylor, yeah.
Yeah, they used to hide them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, well, we've been through the heart of the Balgownie shopping group. I think the next store as we came up the main road would have been Druce's,
Yes, Druce's was along there.
and they were just,
They didn't do any good. They weren't open very long at all. Stacey's store, I don't think you'd remember that one, was on that side of the road.
no.
A real old place. Well, that daughter was Druce's wife, right? They married, and then they opened a shop there, but never seemed to do any good. It wasn't there
yeah.
very long at all.
Okay, well, I think the
Then-
the next one that you'd have a little bit to input, it was the post office, Mrs. Weeks,
Yeah, and old Dick Weeks.
Dick Weeks, yeah.
He used to deliver the mail in a horse and sulky.
Yeah.
And he used to blow the whistle out the front. And if you didn't rush out to get your mail, he just kept going. And you got it the next day if you were lucky. He wouldn't wait on you. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I remember, apart from Mrs. Weeks and her pigeonholes where you had to go and get your mail,
Yeah, they were all in pigeon
and the telephone exchange, which
Yeah.
you plug in and out.
She knew everybody's business.
Yeah, that'll be right. And was it her son or the guy we talked about that grew the bamboo? Who was
Walter.
the postman? Walter.
He was the postman.
Yeah, Walter who?
Scott.
Walter Scott, that's right, Walter
Yeah.
Scott. And
He was the postie.
he used to walk, and
Yeah.
when they
Packed it on his back.
brought in that the postman had to ride a push bike,
Yeah.
he couldn't ride a bike, and there was all hell on in the town
Yeah.
because they're going to sack him because he couldn't
Yeah,
ride a bike.
because he couldn't ride a
But,
bike.
He
Yeah.
ended up proving he could do it just as efficiently on foot,
He did too.
and did, yes. So what else do you think about the post office? Have you got any other memories of that?
Well, yes, I can remember. The kids used to all go up. There was a mail of a morning was delivered, and at 5 o'clock of an afternoon there was a mail came in,
Yeah.
and all the kids used to go down to see if there was any mail, and they'd be all gathered round the door. And old Dick Weeks had a wooden leg. Can you remember that?
No.
He had a wooden leg, and he would have to open the door, and the kids used to just do it. They rush in on top of him and knock him over because, and he used to call them everything, but the kids just did it to get him annoyed. Always, they were annoying him, and I don't think he could be bothered with kids to start with, but they used to rush in on top of him, and he'd be abusing the kids, and they'd all be going round him to get the mail.
Mum told me stories of him apparently on his cart. And one of his tricks was to stick a knife into his leg
Yeah.
because he had a wooden leg.
Yeah, he had a wooden leg, and that was,
Peg
had all
a
the
pocket knife
kids.
into it to sort of
Yeah.
set the kids
Kids
going.
all thought he was putting it in his leg.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a cranky old cow too. But I always remember the mail. If you didn't whiz out, you didn't get your mail. You got it the next day. Yeah.
Well, the only other point I remember of that, of course, is Jack Dinsel, who, when he retired, used to come and pick up the mail
Yeah.
and hand deliver
He was a good fellow
all the way
too.
up the mountain. And he was well in his 60s doing that. And I think the last real business then was Jolliffe's Farm.
Yeah, that's right.
And
There's no more shops
there was
up
a
there.
family there. Bob Jolliffe was the father, and then
Ray Jolliffe
No,
was,
Ray
was the
and-
younger one. He was the
Yeah.
young one. He married the Fripp, one of the Fripp girls,
yeah, but
Ray Murray.
it wasn't Sid. What was his name? Fred.
Freddie Jolliffe,
Fred
yeah, he
Jolliffe
had
owned
the milk
farm.
run, yeah.
He owned the farm.
And he never knew who owed him money either. Freddie used to
No.
leave your milk in the billy can.
That's right, yeah.
He'd say to you, how long is it since you paid me? That's what he used to say.
Well, we used to, Jackie McDonald and I, for a little while,
had to
delivered milk up there.
milk
and,
run, yeah.
we had to go out and catch the darn horse. And Freddie would put the milk on, and then we'd deliver up the mountain.
Yeah.
And people just used to
They
leave
had
their
the big
milk and-
churns with the
yeah, or in the back of the cart had a tank with a tap on, a stainless steel tank.
but you put your billy can on your step,
Yeah, yeah.
and you put it in every morning, and then when you go say how much do I owe, you'd say how long is it since you paid,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, it was a
He was a
pretty-
good fella to this town, Fred. And I'll tell you another thing about him. Everything that was on in this town, he gave the milk for,
Yeah,
free.
yeah.
I donated the milk
Yeah,
for it.
well.
Soccer and all, he
Yeah,
always did. Yeah.
I always remember the father, he had a sled, he used to pull a
Yeah.
sled up in the paddocks behind
Yeah.
us and grow corn.
Yeah, yeah,
And I never liked corn, but all the kids that liked corn, there was
yeah,
tons of corn there.
yeah.
And he would let us ride on the top of the,
Yeah, they were
he'd
good.
stack the corn up on the sled, and kids would get up on top and he'd tow us back
Drive it
to
around,
to the farm.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think then of course we ran up to the school.
That's the school's
was
the next spot,
down
isn't
over the bridge
Over the old wooden bridge.
and up onto the school. And tell me your memories now of the school. What was it like when you started up there?
Very hard. They were tough teachers when I went to school. Mrs. Foster was our first teacher. No one ever forgot Mrs. Foster. She was pretty tough, and oh no, they were ordinary school days, and that you had you had your sports, and there's tennis court there. Then is it still there? I don't know if it's
Yes,
still
it's
there.
still tennis court. Although they're building all down the back of
Tennis
the
court there was, and all the games, just a normal kid's life at school. That was all. You know, we had good teachers and bad teachers.
And
The teacher that, when I got up into 5th class and Jimmy was in 6th class, the teacher used to go to the pub at lunchtime and have a few beers, and Mum got it, how I don't know, but she got us into Fairy Meadow School because we weren't doing as well here. And that's why when I went to Fairy Meadow School, well then I sat for the high school when I was at Fairy Meadow School and went from there into the high
Wollongong
school.
High. Okay.
It was on Smith's Hill then. Was on Smith's Hill in Wollongong.
Yeah. I think my memories of this going to school was that when I see now the kids, they go to preschools and their mums
Oh
take
yeah,
them
you
here.
didn't
and
go
they-
to anything like that.
I started school, Jackie
Yeah.
McDonald and Joan Scarlett picked me
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
and away I went to school.
Yeah, well, we
So,
went to school. We never had any preschool or anything like that either. And I was lucky because the others went there. Like Alice and Ivy and Jimmy went there,
Yep.
so and your mother went
Yep.
there. We all went to Balgownie, but as Jimmy and I, like only in 5th, I went in 5th class and Jimmy was in 6th. And he left school and went at 15, got a job at Lighthouses, went to work,
yeah.
doing shift work, 3 shifts there.
I guess my memories of the school was right at the height of the war years.
Oh, yes.
So
yeah. And that's when they made the shelter where you were
remember
yesterday.
the shelter
isn't it?
and the
Yes.
practice runs once a week,
Yeah.
opening the trap
And
door.
can you remember your mother
kids
made the little bags for around your necks?
Well, everyone had to have a little
yeah,
calico
she
bag
made Billy one as well.
with your name in
You
indelible
had a
ink on it.
peg, didn't you? A peg in it and something to bite on or something.
There was a break off, push bike brake pad.
Something you had to
on
bite,
that.
yeah, to bite on.
And cotton wool for your
Yeah.
ears.
And they had a pick-up point. Each, like, street had a pick-up point if they had to evacuate.
Yeah, the only other thing with the school was that the headmaster would stand out on that little ledge, and if you weren't,
Blow
he would
that
blow the
whistle.
whistle about 5 minutes. If you weren't down over the bridge and heading up the hill,
You were
you'd be
in trouble.
the next day.
Yeah, they were much stricter at the schools than they are now, of course, you know.
And I think the other thing that I found amusing when I thought about it was I remember a school assembly being called, and Sid Hayes came out to present the school with the new
Sid,
football,
yeah.
and that was such a big deal to get a new football. It was worth a school assembly. So,
Mum worked for the school a lot.
yeah. Well, I think they all did. I mean,
All the town did those days.
and I remember also the men, the dads that were around, digging slip trenches down the bottom of the football ground in case there was a raid. Now I'm going to skip through to some of the memories that you and I have of camping at Stewart Park. You remember camping at Stewart Park? Let's have your thoughts. I've got all the stuff.
I thought of it raining all the time. No, how dirty you got at Stewart Park. You used to get that dirty there. We didn't go far, did we?
Yeah, no. I remember Mrs. Needham and the peacocks.
Yeah.
She had a little miniature zoo
A
there.
little zoo thing there.
All right. Well, what about then if we skip down to Lake Illawarra?
Oh, well,
We
that
should
was
have
the
some
times.
memories of that.
We had the times there, didn't we? Yeah. Madge and Ern used to come down, and Doris and Bill come on the train with all their equipment.
Yeah.
They used to come on the train. We had some great times there. Used to throw Madge in the lake every night. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, he used to throw her in. One time she had no clothes left. They threw her in the lake every night.
Why did they do that?
Oh, a bit of fun, Dave. A bit of fun. She was a good sport. Good job she was. But no, we had some good. Only worries there with me was that I was frightened I was going to run out of money before the holiday finished. We used to get our holiday pay then because the steelworks, Lysart's Reg worked at, and the steelworks closed down for 3 weeks at Christmas. They used to maintain all the machines and that.
Some of them were still working. I remember them going to work from nights.
But we used to stay there 6 weeks.
Yep.
And the 3 weeks holiday, then the next 3 weeks they used to travel to work from there. We had the whole school holidays there. We used to have I think, and you kids mainly were there too, because as I said, your mum and dad went with Joe
we were there the whole
Scarlett
time,
quite a bit, sort of.
But I think, tell me a little bit more about the hard days, about the money. You've told me before about how you would run out of money on
Oh, yes.
2 or 3 days before payday.
You're always waiting on payday coming. You never had anything left over, ever. It was sort of, I put that away. We paid fortnightly, so you had to halve that and make sure you kept a little bit. But you never kept enough because you dibbled into that as the time went. And that cake shop at the lake was deadly because you kids were wanting pies and bread and that every day, and I used to think it's not going to last that long. This money's not going to last long enough for us, to stay here. And I think it was only about 5 shillings a week to camp there. It wasn't that expensive.
And hire the boat.
Oh, we had to hire the boat, yeah. And then you used to go out prawning a lot, of course, Sort of. You were one of the older ones, sort of a bit older.
Lived on the water there.
Other little kids, sort of, yeah. Remember when the father used to pile it all on his truck and take us down to the lake? And they'd put the tent up and just put everything in, and they'd come home. The next day we'd have to sort it all out. And even Mary still talks about the next morning one time, and they come in with the ice, and they couldn't, there was just one big pile and we were asleep and the dog was in there as well, and the fella just looked around and walked out the tent. He didn't believe it. No, we had some great old times there.
Another good time, cracker nights.
Oh yes, that was the night, wasn't it, of the year? Yeah. Only thing, poor old Smokey used to be a wreck by the time it was over.
Smokey being the dog.
Yeah. The bottom block was vacant, see, and that's where they had and they all were frightened of someone's going to light it before it come to cracker night. Used to drag everything home to go on this fire for weeks ahead, weren't you? So you used to be dragging everything home to go on. And can you remember when you had your leg in splints?
Yeah.
And your father brought you down, carried you down the back, remember? On a chair, and carried you down the back. And Billy was throwing crackers under you, and he got into trouble off Mum because he knew you couldn't chase him because you had this thing on your leg. And he got into big trouble off Mum because he was throwing the crackers at you. when you
Yes.
couldn't get up.
And Smokey was he was well named dog because he would run and pick up, the kids would light a big bunger and throw it, and he'd run
Yeah,
pick it
he'd
up
go
and bring it
and
back.
get the dash thing. He'd be a wreck after it,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And you know, he used to play footy and all. with
Oh,
the
yeah,
kids. They
yeah,
used to
so-
pick him on the
yeah,
side
yeah.
when they were playing footy.
Okay, the other highlight down there was if we weren't away, we'd put the tent up and have a Christmas
Yeah, we
Christmas
had a
in the
big
tent.
Christmas, and you used to have to we used to have Christmas dinner all at home, and then everybody came for dinner at night.
yeah.
And everyone bought something. Each one, you know, bought something different, because you couldn't afford to feed the whole family yourself. But everyone bought something. And then they had to wash up before you were allowed to have the Christmas tree.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
once the tree come, the washing up didn't get done. So they had to wash up before they could have their Christmas tree. Yeah, it was good fun too.
Well, we've touched on the playing cricket and football in that place as well, and I remember
That was
smashing
all
that
Christmas,
window.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it's usually around there, but all through the year we either played football or cricket there.
Yeah, and I could always remember my poor old plants copped it.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving along, some of my other points was the Balgownie football ground. That always had a big part to play in our lives.
Big part in my life, Balgownie footy ground, yeah. Yeah, we had some, well, we used to, when we first went down and worked for it, you were in a tent, and it would be mud, you'd be up to your ankles in mud, sort of trying to serve things, and those days it was only promises and things like that.
Yeah.
But as they improved, they got the shed from the steelworks, I think it was, wasn't it,
Yes,
the old
yeah,
building?
yeah.
That
was
big
well-
mill.
Yeah, that was well into it though.
Big
when we
mill,
were at,
and oh yeah, I can remember way back going down there, and they used to be able to run up and down the line. They didn't have
Yeah,
the railing and that.
Oh
there.
no, you're on the line.
You know, you're on the line, and you got into more trouble than the players did. You know, sort of. It was
well-
very bitter stuff those days, you know.
And I remember the pies at the ladies' canteen.
Yeah.
And all the ladies there were the mums of the kids.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It was
yeah.
junior football.
Yeah.
And I always remember there's seemed to be always huge fights between the junior
Oh, I've had
and
some
the
fights
seniors,
with
because the
the whole
juniors
area.
had the money from the
And they wouldn't give the juniors anything.
no. The
And
juniors didn't give them much.
I
either.
can remember having arguments with Eric Ramsey
Yeah,
over that.
yeah.
I'll
Eric-
let you have it. I said, you'll let us have it. You didn't get it. We got it for them, you know.
Eric,
so-
Eric Ramsey was the local member.
Yeah, but
He
he,
got there through the trade union.
yeah, he was a
top
trade
unionist,
union
but,
man too.
I think the
Yeah.
general perception was that he might be able to bully the general manager of the steelworks around.
Yeah.
But the ladies' committee was quite beyond him. I don't think he
yeah.
ever had any victories over them.
No, he never did. I can always remember we bought an urn, and it was off Ryan and Moore's cordial factory. They were selling out, and we bought the urn. And he come one day and said, "Oh, they wanted the urn. Juniors were having something on." And he said, "Oh, we'll rent it to you, give it to you, you know."
Yeah.
Gee, I got sore red, and I said, "You didn't even put a penny in to get it." No way. Anyway, they bluffed him out of it, you know. But we've had some fights over the soccer. I have.
Well, the other thing I remember of it was the slaughter yard and the
They used
digester.
to come on
They used to
there.
stoke that thing up with a
I reckon
stench.
they used to just do that if they
Yeah,
were getting
yeah.
beat. Yeah,
And I think the other
pretty
thing,
awful, wasn't it?
the town was so quiet because there were no cars around.
Oh no.
But I can remember in Balmoral Street, usually be helping Dad work on the darn trucks on a Saturday, but you could hear Balgownie
Yeah,
scored a goal
you
with
knew.
a cheer, and if it was a bit of a muffled draw, you knew it was one against them.
Well, I can go before that. When Mum had this job and was catering for them, the girls, Ivy and Alice, they couldn't go because they had to help Mum. And Jimmy used to climb up on the front of the shop awning and try and see and tell them what was happening down at the football ground.
Yeah.
Because they had to help Mum, they had to stay home and help Mum, so he'd do the catering too.
Okay. Well, just very briefly tell us about the bus trips to Sydney with the football club.
Oh, they were funny too. Yeah, we had some good times there too. But we got put out of a town one night. They kicked up so much fuss. But if they wanted to stop, they just stopped. You never got home till midnight sometimes
Yeah.
because if they wanted to stop, they stopped and lit a fire and on the side of the road.
Usually along Appin Road.
Yeah, and they used to go in the pub before they left the
Yeah.
town that they were playing in, of course, you know, sort of. Yeah.
They had bit more grog that they thought they'd be home before they had time to drink it, they would just stop the bus
Oh,
and
you
light a
start-
fire and
get out and have a bonfire,
Yeah.
sort of. We had some fights in Sydney too with the soccer. They were good old times,
yeah.
those were.
okay. Well,
But you had a bus full went then.
well, there was more than I
You
remember.
know.
A couple of times there's 2 or 3 buses.
Yeah.
Going. I had other memories. You know, the trapping and shooting rabbits in the paddocks behind home there, and you know, selling rabbits to Mrs. Robinson's,
Yeah.
9pence a pair. And of course, the one I can recall of that time of my childhood was going to Wollongong Pictures with you.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I usually overspend at half time and not have my bus fare home, which you end up having to pay out of a little bit of money you did have left.
But you never had money over those days. You
Yeah.
was cut, or everything you were cut into the merest thing you can spend, you know, because you just
yeah.
never had the money to do
Yeah,
it. But
yeah.
your money's just the same, you know, sort of.
Yeah, well, again, I'm sort of just running through my memories now, because they all involve you in some way or another. But you know, swimming, it was always in Balgownie creeks, was
Oh,
where
yeah.
you learnt to swim. And for us, Murray's was the first
Murray's
waterhole
and then
up this
Barney's
end.
were too deep for beginners,
And then
wasn't
Barney's, well, Murray's was the canoeing area.
Yeah.
You put the canoes in there, and
it?
Barney's
Digging up
was-
the road to make your canoes.
and you run them down the river, and
That was illegal too, you know, digging up the road just
Yeah.
to make your canoe.
I can always recall Murray's. Whenever I think of Murray's, I think of the time we all got nailed because we'd been raiding the fruit in Murray's orchard, and we always stripped off. We never had togs, and we were in the canoes, and we came back. Our clothes were gone, and Mrs. Murray had picked them up,
Yeah.
and she beckoned us up to the house and held up so we
You
knew
had
who
to
had
go
our
and
clothes.
get them.
And so there was about 6 of us all standing there stark as embarrassed as hell, while she lectured us on stealing. And she then gave us our clothes back and a bag of fruit each.
Yeah,
and told us
that's what it was like.
if you wanted some fruit, ask for
Yeah.
it, but don't go to the fence and
Have to
pinch it.
pinch it.
The other thing involving you was with Barney's, was it was always, well, most of summer was supposedly banned because of the pollution levels.
Oh, there used
And
to be
we'd be-
dead cats and everything.
We'd be
you know.
warned at school to keep out of it, and Mum and Dad was always after us, and you know, we still swam there. But I can remember coming back to your place because you'd always call in there, and you'd say, you know, you've been swimming in Barney's, haven't you? And we never lied to you for some
It used
reason.
to dirty down the
And-
front
and
of
you
it.
would clean us up before Mum and Dad
Yeah,
would spot us. But
before they caught you.
we had our downfall because one year we all came out in boils.
Yeah, that was bad.
Every kid that
Yeah,
had been
I
in there
can
came out in
remember.
boils. And so it was pretty obvious who
Oh, it
had
was
it.
putrid at times,
Yeah.
yeah.
And of course, the other thing was going over the back of the mountain. We used to get up there and
Yeah.
catch crawchies, but
Well, I didn't go on those
no, you
trips.
didn't. We camped the weekend there and get in the water, get in the creek and go down the creek till we got too deep and then back again. But I remember that water was so damn cold. And of course, the crystal pool was always on the way too.
Yeah, it was a great spot for you, wasn't it?
Yes, how long have you lived here? Right opposite the hotel.
Reg died in 1970 and I came up about 2 years later. Be over 30 years,
Over 30 years. And how many times have you been in the hotel?
Once.
Once.
yeah. And that was by invitation when the pub turned 150 or something, wasn't it? Yeah. And that was by invitation. That was for dinner. That was it.
Upstairs.
Yeah, upstairs.
You weren't in the bars. of
Oh,
course.
no, I've never been in the bar. No.
Why not?
Oh, well, I don't know. Women just didn't go in bars those days,
They
David.
do now, so why would you go in now?
Oh, no, I couldn't now. I'd feel that uncomfortable. No way. It'd have to be emergency before I went in. Just a thing, I suppose. Women weren't allowed in the bars at all those days, early days, sort of.
No.
No.
Okay, the circus in Balgownie. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, well, once every now and again they brought a circus to the town, sort of, and had the performing animals and that, sort of. And that's where the horse told me I was the best looking girl in Balgownie.
That's the statement I want to be given.
I got to keep to that one. Only time I've ever been told. Yeah. I thought I couldn't get home quick enough. I thought I was wonderful.
But that circus used to be held over the just over the road. I can remember the circus in there.
in the paddock there. Mm.
And then I think that was another one was held down by the football ground.
Yeah, and one year your father, when he had the horse and that, Uncle Jim didn't have some of the bottom ground in garden, and your father put oats in or something for the horse, you know, a crop.
Yeah.
And the kids all cleaned it out, big patch out, feeding the horses and that. When he come down, they'd sort of, as far as they could get, they'd pulled it all out to feed to the horses over in the circus. Yeah. That was a big event, a circus those days, event coming. Yeah.
I remember that along the hill behind the Catholic Church was where the troops were.
Yeah, they were up behind there.
And I used to get up there and have my tea
Oh,
there
you nearly lived there.
with the soldiers. And that...
I can remember once you bought some of their shirts home for your mother to wash.
Mine, yeah. That didn't go down very well.
No, it didn't.
But I was interested that at the school they didn't know about those
Didn't they?
camps. No. So that was
Well, they should have,
another,
because like Georgie Robertson,
Yeah,
them all should
yeah.
have known that. So.
that was another interesting aspect of Balgownie, and I remember that over on Madden's, was it Madden's Hill we used to call that?
Over Madden's Hill, they had the trenches.
They also had...
They had
would have been cavalry.
soldiers there.
Oh yes.
Yes.
They had the Bren gun carriers there.
Yeah, they did.
And they used to run them across down in front of the school, and obviously having exercises with the troops that were up on the back of the hill there by the
Yes, they
the old
did.
mountain road. And that was always a great delight for the kids too.
Oh, yes.
And the amazing thing is they used to let the kids somewhere near them too.
Oh, they did. They didn't care. Yeah.
One stage I had a ride in one of the Bren gun carriers. And I think probably just again for this record, one of my other memories of the war, and I'd like you to tell the story, but I remember the guys coming in with the burns on their back.
Oh,
Would you
that was
take
off
that?
the Centaur.
Okay, keep coming.
That
That
was-
sort of,
Well, they were on the Centaur and burned, but who was on they reckon there was only medical personnel on there, but there was always talk that they had troops on it, you know. And those soldiers over at Cabbage Tree Lane, I used to keep all the magazines and books, and they would come in and get them off you for something.
was that Cabbage Tree Lane or
Yeah.
Tarrawanna?
No,
Tree Lane
Cabbage
was the
Tree
Americans.
Lane, there was one.
Yeah, they were the Americans.
Well, they used to get we used to keep all books and magazines we could collect for them, and in return they would bring you perhaps a pound of butter or a piece of bacon or something that we couldn't get.
Yeah.
That was ration that we couldn't get. They would bring you something like that. But like you used to get as many books off anybody you could, and they used to call in and get them as they went past. But they always brought you back something for it. Not money, but always a bit of bacon or butter was rationed, and that's always been my weakness, butter. And they'd bring you butter or something like that for it, you know. And then Ida and Jimmy Etheridge, they had a lot to do with the Centaur troops.
Yeah.
In fact, one of their wives lived at Ida's for a while he was in camp there. Mac
How do you
Maguire was his
How
name.
do you know they were Centaur troops?
Well, they were on the boat when I went
How do you
out.
know that?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Well, I left here and went on. I've got a picture of their boats that one of them gave me.
Be interested to have a look at that afterwards, if you can find it.
Yeah.
No, stay there, don't go now.
They used to come to our place on their way to the club.
Yes, I know all, you know, I remember the soldiers coming in, and I remember those two guys, I think it was 2 or 3 of them,
It was.
taking their shirts off
Yeah.
to show where their backs were burnt, where they'd swum through the oil.
They were, and then they abandoned that over there and just left a lot of rubbish there, sort of, when they went, you know, onto
Well, that's what they called it. I remember when the Americans left out of Cabbage Tree Lane, they had the more permanent huts, and I think within about 3 weeks there wasn't a sink or a
No.
tap or anything left. The
That's
locals cleaned that out pretty quickly.
That was when that laundry of ours was built on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Jimmy Etheridge
Yeah, that'd be
carried a door from over there on his back
Yeah, that'd be
over
right.
to put on the laundry door, to
Yeah.
put a door on the
Yeah.
laundry.
That American camp was demolished in about 3 weeks
Yeah, oh, well, you didn't leave anything.
by the locals.
Yeah.
It,
But they lived in those ones from the Centaur and those ones over there, they were in Balgownie all the time because they had nowhere else to go, sort of thing. And I think every Saturday night Reg brought somebody home for tea, a soldier home for tea at night. You know, that's what they did, but people did. They just went and had a meal with them, you know, sort of. I tell you, they'd say the good old days, but I can't see it myself because there were a lot of worry into rearing a family those days, you know, a lot of trouble and that.
I'm sure, but and I suspect even though the hard life you've had, you would be the same. We never went hungry. I never went to bed hungry.
No, we never went home. But I think too, David, it gives you better values. The young ones say, there's something, tell you, I want that, they get it. But where you've waited on things, I think it gives you better value in life. That you sometimes can't always have what you want straight away. You know, but you probably do the same with your grandkids, buy them what they want.
Exactly.
Sort of. You know, well,
Probably
yeah,
buy
I
them
imagine
more than they
Barb, I can, well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I go, at Christmas I said, this is silly having all these things, and I said, well, who bought most of them? You know, sort of, which is true, you know, sort of, but that's just a different life altogether. There's more money now than there ever been, I think, as far
But
as
I think though Balgownie hasn't changed a heck of a lot. I mean, it's changed as far
Still
as
nice
the buildings,
people.
but the people. I was very pleased the last time we were here, and I walked out and there was a bunch sitting around down there having a beer with their bikes,
Oh, yeah.
and they
That's
saw
Paul. That's Paul's mate.
they saw the Victorian car and they were interested in the Jaguar,
Yeah.
and I just spoke to them and they said, "Oh, were you with Jean?" And I said, "Yes."
Oh, we're like this.
And he said, don't you worry about Jean. We keep an eye on her. We look after her. And,
It was funny, the
and,
other
a couple of big bikies.
and they're middle-aged bikies
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
made me love. And there's one called Russ, and I don't think he's ever sober. And a couple
That
of
means
weeks.
he has one can a day.
No, he's not. He's quite. Even Paul will tell you he has too much. And Lorraine brought me home one night. Usually the kids bring me home, but we'd had something on. They'd had a few drinks, so she brought me home. And it was about 9, 10 o'clock, and he has them. But I'll tell you one thing with him: never comes upstairs. It's always in the garage.
Yeah.
He's got that fitted out,
Yeah.
you know. And this Russ come out, and Lorraine, they wait. If they don't come up, the young ones come up. I go to the window and wave. I'm okay inside, okay. And this Russ said, "Go on, get going. She's in our care now. She'll be all right." And Lorraine said, "God, I didn't know whether he'd fall up the steps or you know." But that's the kind. He looks out.
Yeah, they were
he looks out for us.
very keen to assure me that no harm.
Safe
no
once he
harm could
gets
come.
home.
Yeah.
He's very good because he does, you know, in the hot weather. He said, "Now, June, if you don't feel up to going down watering your plants, just let me know and I'll water them for you." Things like that, little things like that, he's good, you know.
Okay, well, I think we're just about to wind up, but to wind this up, there's one thing I have to say about you. All of the nephews, and then some, but the immediate nephews, I think all owe you in more ways than one.
No, you don't owe anything, David.
Don't over talk because, but no, we always knew that if we were in trouble or we had a secret or we had some information we weren't too sure, we would come to you and talk to you because we knew that it would always stay with you. It was never ever passed back to parents or anything else.
Well, I think I'm the same. That's why so many ring me up.
And
with
that's
their
why
trouble.
that is exactly why we also love you so much, I guess is the right word. But it is something that I'm sure all of them know that and I know that you have some secrets.
Oh, I have a few.
And you have them stuck there, but they're never ever going to come up.
They don't, though.
And
I don't.
the advice you gave us or when you spoke to us, it was never criticism. It might have been
Trying
that you
to
weren't
get-
too happy about
Might
it.
be
but,
rousing there a bit.
and I think that's a feature.
Well, it's a
of
nice
you,
thought to have.
and it's the reason why we all feel so strongly.
Oh,
about
well,
you.
I feel happy that you feel that way about it, you know, sort of. I only did what I think is right anyway, and I honestly, now, I have a friend comes to see me, and he always says, I can tell you anything, Jean, because I know it's not going to go out the room, and that, and I think I feel that way that it doesn't, you know, sort of.
Okay, well,
Well,
just for the camera.
You're three and we were close to you three kids because you come to our place so much, you know.
But just for the camera and on behalf of all your nephews,
Oh, right.
we love you very much.
Oh, that's
Hang on.
that's the nicest thing to know.
Love you
anyway.
very much.
Oh, that's lovely of you. I love you all too, you know. You were just the only thing that God had ever made when you were little. Yeah, it was lovely. It's lovely of you to speak that way. It's nice to think you thought of that way, isn't it? You know, sort of.
You've got it on tape now.
All right, I got proof now, eh?
Righto, that's it.
That's it.
that
that's
wasn't too hard, was it?
No, it wasn't bad. Just had to keep my hands where I'm.
Well, I was just thinking.
I have them up here, and then I think, no, I better put them back down here.
I was thinking you were keeping all those secrets. I didn't realise one day you're going to.
I didn't either. Now there's all that proof, isn't there? Should have kept quiet. I should have.